different isolated separate is used to a VLAN lets you create separate isolated networks within one physical network. One physical network meaning you can separate computers that are on the same physical network, that is on layer 2, the data link layer. Routers work on layer 3. VLANs work in layer 2. That is the data link layer. Routers work at the transport layer, I think. Yeah, so we are going to have our computers. So I'll try to go step by step. So I'll have my computers here. I prefer putting this up like this. My computer is there. So, and I'll get my switches. I'll have a switch for this computer and a switch and another switch to connect these lower computers. So I'm going to connect these computers to their respective switches. So this computer will use first Ethernet 1. So this computer connected it to first Ethernet 1, interface 1 on this first switch. Then I'll connect also this one to first Ethernet 2. We'll also have these computers. We shall see that all the computers on the second computer, we shall see that all the computers will be connecting to each other at first. Then we shall see the effect of including VLANs into the network, how it will separate our networks. So we have these computers connected to that switch, and then we shall join these two switches using a crossover. Shall use first Ethernet 3 down here, and then up here first Ethernet 3. So we are going to give the computers IP addresses. Now the switches work at a data link layer, that is layer 2. So all these computers will be under one physical network. So we shall assign, let me use, not say we shall assign our first, I'm just labeling here so that we can follow. And this will be number 2. This will be computer 3. Not 3, and this will be 4. Not 4. So currently the computers don't have IP addresses. So what we are going to do first is to create the physical network by assigning IP addresses. So this one we shall assign it 1.1.1.1.1. Click there to get the subnet mask. Then we shall assign the second one IP address 2, 1.1.1.2. Then this I shall assign it IP address 1.1.1.3, and then 1.1.1.4, 1.1.1.4. So now I want to show us that all these computers can see each other because they are all currently on VLAN 1. VLAN 1 is the default VLAN. So all these computers are currently on VLAN 1 by default, meaning they can see each other. So I am going to ping I'm going to ping from 1.1.1.4 all these other computers and see that they see each other. So from here I will ping this other computer 1.1.1. If I receive a reply, it means they're able to communicate. So 1.1. So computer IP address 4, 1.1.1.4 can communicate with that. It can also communicate with the 2. And it can also communicate with 3 since they're already on the same switch, right? So we can see there is connectivity between all the computers. So I've pinged from this computer, I've managed to communicate, get replies from all the computers, so they are all connected. They are all connected. Why? Because by default they are on VLAN 1, all of them. So we are going to start introducing the VLANs, and we shall use VLAN. So we would want to put this computer into VLAN 10. Okay, it's not working. So we want to put this computer under VLAN 10, right? And also this under VLAN 10. Okay, because currently they are on VLAN by default. VLAN, they are all on VLAN 1 by default. That's why they are communicating with each other, because they are all on the same VLAN, all of them. How do I know that they are all on the same VLAN? You come to this switch and we shall show the VLANs that are on this switch. So if I say enable it into executive mode, then I'll say show VLAN. You see all of them are under VLAN 1 by default. So this is VLAN 1 by default, and all the ports on that switch are under VLAN 1. Similarly, on this second switch, you will see that shall enable to get into executive mode. Enable. Then when I say show VLAN, you see that all the VLANs, all the ports on that switch are by default under VLAN 1, and it is active. So that is why they are able to see each other, because by default they are under VLAN 1. So now we want to introduce a new VLAN for them. So we want to move this computer and connect it to VLAN 10. As you have seen here, VLAN 10 doesn't exist, so we are supposed to create it and then move the port to which this computer is connected to VLAN 10. So which port is this computer connected to on this switch? So we shall find out all the ports to which the computers have been connected to. So this computer, this PC with IP 1.1.1.1 is connected to interface FS01. So I'll just label the interfaces here. to help us. And this is 02, and then this is 03, right? Yeah, so this interface here is FA0/2, where the second computer is connected, and then the other switch to switches on interface FA0/3. This is also FA0/3. 0/3. It's where they are being connected to. So this is to represent the interfaces, okay? So we know this computer 2 is connected to the switch via interface 2, and then these two switches are linked via interface 3. This computer is 2 and then linked via 2 and 1. So this will be interface 2. So labeling helps like keep track of where we are. And then 1. Of how things are being configured. So when we want to move this PC to VLAN 10, what we're actually doing is moving this port where it is connected to from VLAN 1, where it is by default, and then removing it from here and bringing it to a VLAN 10, which we are going to create. So, and once it is created and moved to VLAN 10, it means it will be separated. As we have seen, the definition of a VLAN is to create small separate networks within one big network. So our next task will be to create VLAN 10, where PC 1.1.1 will be located. So we shall do conf t, configure terminal, get into global mode. Then we shall create the VLAN first because it doesn't exist. VLAN 10. We'll give it a name. Could be a department or your name. So we'll give it a name, maybe let me use Emma. So we shall. I'm supposed to exit, go back to executive mode, then show VLAN. Show VLAN. And now show VLAN. Yes. So we have created VLAN 10 Emma, but we have not yet moved the port where the computer 1.1.1 is connected to. We have not yet brought it to, so assigned it to that VLAN. So that is our next step. To move our PC 0, which is 1.1.1.1 to VLAN 10. So to do that, we shall enter the configuration, global conf. Then we select the interface using the command interface FA0/1. We have selected that interface. Then we are going to switch it using the switch port mode access. We are going to switch it to VLAN 10. Switch port access, and we switch it to VLAN 10. Okay, so we exit, then we show VLAN. So we see VLAN 1 has moved away from the default VLAN to the new one that we have created, which is VLAN 10 called Emma. Okay, so what does that mean now? So remember when we were here on this computer, we could see VLAN 10. We could get a reply from VLAN 1. We could get a reply, from the PC 1. But now that we have moved it to a different virtual network, will they still communicate? So I'm going to ping. So remember, we are pinging from this computer. Before they were seeing each other. Will they still be seeing each other? So when we ping, we see there is no reply. Request timed out, meaning this computer no longer sees this one. Why? Because this one has moved to VLAN 10. So we also want to move this one, this PC3. We want to move it to VLAN 10 also, so that these two can communicate with each other. But this one is on a different switch, right? So we are going to come now. Also, since this one has changed to VLAN 1, it means since this cable is connecting to this switch and then to this computer or PC3, they will have to be on the same VLAN network, meaning the port here F03, F03 and F02 all have to be under VLAN 10. Currently this computer can still see PC2, which is 1.1.1.2. Why? Because it is still under VLAN 1. They are still under the same VLAN. All these PCs are still under 2, 3, and 4 are still under VLAN 1. Even this cable is still under VLAN 1. This crossover cable, the ports to which they are connected to, these ports are still under VLAN 1. That is why even if you have to ping this, try to ping this, or ping 1.1 from 2, you won't get a reply because it has been moved to a different VLAN. So our task now would be to bring this PC3 1.1.1.4 to VLAN 10, so that it can communicate with 1.1.1.1. And to do that, they have to be on the same VLAN. So if this port is now VLAN 10, it means this port F3, this interface port 3 is supposed to be in VLAN 10, so that it carries communication for VLAN 10 to this port here in the second switch, which is also supposed to be in VLAN 10, and also this interface switch, the interface port is also supposed to be in VLAN 10, so that this one can also be communicate as though it is in VLAN 10. So when we go back to the first switch, we want to move this interface 3, which is still under VLAN 1, as you can see. We want to move it and bring it to VLAN 10, because it is the one that will carry our traffic to PC to 1.1.1.4. So on the switch, we are going to add the interface 3 to VLAN 10. Config terminal, so choose the interface, which is FS0/3. Then we shall switch it using the switch port command, command access, then switch port access, switch port access, VLAN 10. see whether it has been added to our VLAN. So we shall do the show VLAN. So now we see VLAN 10 now also has interface 3 and interface 1. So we shall follow that cable. So interface 3 and interface 1 are now under VLAN 10. So now we come to this switch and we check out the VLANs that are there. Show VLAN. We see we don't have any VLAN 10, right? We don't have any VLAN 10. So we are going to create it in that switch and assign the ports F3 in the second switch to VLAN 10, and also this interface FA0 interface 2, to which the computer is connected to, also to VLAN 10, so that now they communicate with each other. So we shall do the conf t enter global mode, go to global configuration mode. Then we first create the VLAN 10 because it doesn't exist yet. Then we give it a name. We call it Emma. Then we shall exit again. Then let us show VLAN to see how it is. So we have created also VLAN 10 now, and now we are going to move F3, these two ports. We want to now move these two ports to VLAN 10 so that they can, so that 1.1.1.4 can communicate with 1.1.1.1. So we enter conf t configuration, global configuration mode. Then we now choose the interface. We shall start with interface 3. Interface FA03/3. It is the one, since it's the one connecting to out to the second switch. Then we shall switch it from VLAN 1 using the switch port, mode access, then switch port, access VLAN 10. And then we shall exit. Then let me add them together. The next one will be interface FA2, sorry, 2. I worked on 3. So I shall also switch it using the command switch ports, mode access, then switch port access VLAN 10. I also assigned it to VLAN 10. We shall exit and exit. And just show our VLAN. Okay, so now the two ports. Now these two ports, so this whole line is VLAN 10 from 1.1.1.1 to 1.1.1.4. So when we last checked, we couldn't communicate, right? We tried to ping 1.1.1 from 4, we couldn't communicate. But it would communicate with these other two. We could communicate with the IP2. So now let us ping again 1 and see if we shall be able to communicate. So now we are communicating with 1. meaning they are now on the same VLAN. But can we communicate with two? We won't be able to communicate with two now. Why? Because we are no longer in the same VLAN. So you can see one can communicate with 4, but now it cannot communicate with any other computer. So if I ping 1.1.1.4, we'll get a reply because they are now on the same VLAN. If I try to ping 1.1.1.2, we won't get any reply. It will time out. Even if I try to ping with 3, it will also time out. If I try to ping 1.1.1.3, it will also time out because they are now, for him, they are still on 1 as being the default the default VLAN. So we have managed to create VLAN 10 by assigning these ports to VLAN 10. So if these ones can communicate, can 2 communicate with 3? Let us see. So if I try to ping 1.1.1.3, we are pinging. Should it? You would think it's supposed to connect, but it is not going to connect. Wow, so it means there is no cable joining VLAN, VLAN 1. This cable that is in port 3 and 3 down here has been taken over by VLAN 10, and 2 VLANs cannot share the same port. So since it has been taken over by VLAN 10, what option do we have? We cannot use it to communicate with these other ones. But if we add a second cable and connect it to another interface, maybe connect it to 4, and also 4 up there. Okay. Notice they're still under VLAN 1, right? If I now try to ping, notice we try to ping and they were not seeing each other because the other one is on the default VLAN 1, second one 1.1.1.2 is on VLAN 1, also 1.1.1.3 is on VLAN 1. So if we ping it again, because it failed the other time, we shall see that we are getting a reply now. After adding a second cable. Okay. So right now we have a VLAN 10 and the default VLAN 1 on this network. And they are still communicating. But if we want to assign, instead of using the default VLAN, we want to use maybe VLAN 20. We shall now want to assign this to VLAN 20 and also this to a VLAN 20 instead of leaving it the default VLANs. So we shall do here VLAN 20. We want to put them in VLAN 20. So currently, right now, we are in the default VLAN. Okay. We saw that when we connected the second cable, at first they couldn't see each other, but when we connected the second cable, we received the reply. Okay, so back to the switch. So back to to the switch, if I were to show the VLAN, we only have VLAN 10, but want to introduce VLAN 20 and then assign the ports 2 and 4. And this one is, let me move this side, because this is port 4. Yeah. So let me label this 4 for the second cable. And 4. So now we want to assign interface on the first switch. We want to assign interface 2 and 4 to VLAN 20. But after creating VLAN 20, then we shall come to the second switch and then assign interface 1 and 4 to VLAN 20, so that they also have their highway of VLAN 20. Okay, so let's start with the first switch. So in the first switch, we are moving these ports here to VLAN 20 after creating VLAN 20. So we shall do configuration, configure terminal. We first create the VLAN, give it a name, call it Derek, exit. So we have created the terminal, okay? For the sake of learning, let me show that we have created it. Show VLAN. So we have created VLAN 20 here, and now we are going to move these 2 ports to VLAN 20. That will be, so we enter the global configuration mode, select the terminal, then select the interface, interface 2, then we shall switch it using the command switch port mode access. So we are switching it, switching port access to VLAN 20, exit. Then the second interface, do the second interface. We shall check at once whether the interfaces have changed, have been reassigned from VLAN 1 to VLAN 2. Interface FA0/4. Also switching it. And switching it. I shall switch this port. So we shall switch this port, switch port access to VLAN 20 also. Okay, so we shall check using show VLANs. So let's fast forward. So we shall show the VLAN. So now if interface 2 and interface 4 have moved to VLAN 20. So next we are going to move interface 4 on the second switch and interface 1 to VLAN 20. We shall check to see that we have not yet created a VLAN. Show VLAN. We don't have VLAN 20, so we are going to move 4 and 1, these two, to VLAN 20 after creating it. First create the VLAN, which is VLAN 20. Give it a name, call it Derek. Exit. For the sake of confirming, let's show VLAN. Okay, we now have VLAN 20, so now we are going to move port 1 and port 4 to VLAN 20. We shall do the conf t. Configuration T, select the interface. Shall start with 1. Interface F there. Shall switch it. Switch port mode access. Switch port mode access, then switch port access. Switching it to VLAN 20. Okay. Then we shall select the second interface. Which is interface 4. Interface 4, then we shall select, you need to switch port mode access, and then switch port access VLAN 20. Then we shall exit and exit again. So that now we see how the VLAN table looks like. Okay, so port 4 and port 1 are now under VLAN 20, so they should be able to see. So now they should be able to see each other. Because I hadn't checked. Okay. Oh, I wish I had checked before adding this cable. Okay, so before moving them before changing this cable's interface to VLAN 20, you would see that when I change this one to VLAN 20, this one would have disappeared. But anyway, right now we should be able to still ping. Because we have created the highway for, let me call it a highway, we have created a highway for VLAN 20 through interface 2, then 4, then 4 in the next one, and then 1 to that particular computer. So we can choose to configure. We can choose to configure all the ports according to the VLANs that we want. Yeah, so that is how we would use two switches to connect to VLANs.